Hello, my name is Braden. This is Airless Cool 9, and in today's video, we are going to take a second look at how we might improve the 2024 Ranger. This is the second video I've done on this particular subject, so if you're interested on what changes I made previously, take a look at the first video. This second part in this How to Improve the 2024 Ranger series is meant to address some of the comments that you all came up with, as well as introduce some new features that I've come up with just off the top of my head, and see if we can improve upon what was done in the first video and make the Ranger a class worthy of the 2024 revisions that were done. Unfortunately, Ranger got the short end of the stick when it came to these class revisions for the 2024 rules revision. So this video is meant to improve upon the Ranger in a way that makes it stand up with those other class revisions. Now, what we are trying to do is just improve upon the base class. I do not plan on replacing any of the existing features within the Ranger class. This is meant to be a supplement, so you can drag and drop the features that you like and put them in the Ranger. And with the second go around, I have a few goals that I want to try to do. I'm looking specifically to improve damage for tiers 3 and 4. If any of you are familiar with Treant Monk, he has come out with some videos about the damage curves of all the different classes, and Ranger in particular really suffers in tiers 3 and 4. So we are looking to try to improve that slightly, but we're not wanting to do anything crazily significant. We're simply trying to just improve upon what was given and make the Ranger a fun class to play. What we're also trying to do with this particular video is make Hunter's Mark worth the concentration. A lot of the comments in my last video, at least a couple, said that they felt like giving Ranger the ability to cast Hunter's Mark without concentration was a little bit too powerful. And I do agree with that slightly, because if we take a look at the Warlock, Hex is very similar to Hunter's Mark in a few ways. I mean, it improves the damage, it's the same amount, a d6, and I mean, it's not force damage, but arguably force damage is more potent than necrotic damage. And so I wanted to take a look at this as what would Wizards of the Coast try to do if they took a third stab at this class. So we are not adding in a feature that makes Hunter's Mark non-concentration, because Warlock doesn't do that. Instead, I took some design aspects based on the Great Old One patron. The Great Old One in 2024 has some new features that improve upon the Hex spell. So I figured that we could do something similar with Hunter's Mark. The 2024 Ranger already does this, but it only really does it late in tiers 3 and 4. So I am looking to add something to make that theme progress throughout the entirety of the class. And then the last goal that we really have is to give the Ranger a better level 20 capstone. At level 20, the 2024 Ranger gets a capstone called Foe Slayer that increases the damage die of Hunter's Mark from a d6 to a d10. And while that's interesting, it's not an amazing capstone. So we are really looking to improve upon that level 20 capstone. And the way that we're going to do that is we're just going to give an additional feature at level 20, as we'll see. So let's get into the first feature that I would like to add to the Ranger. So at level 6, we're going to add a feature called Reactive Hunter. This lets us cast Hunter's Mark as a reaction in response to taking damage. So this is really to address a couple things. Hunter's Mark requires you to take a bonus action to cast the spell, normally. With this particular feature, we now have a secondary alternative to casting the spell, and this is really going to come in handy, particularly when the Ranger is not going first initiative and it takes damage from an enemy. So with being able to cast Hunter's Mark as a reaction, since Ranger gets free castings of Hunter's Mark, this is going to give them 2 options to casting this spell and free up their action economy slightly. In addition, whenever they cast Hunter's Mark, they can choose one of the following additional effects that Hunter's Mark will have for this casting. So there are 2 options here. The first one is called Warding Mark. The creature that is currently marked by your Hunter's Mark has disadvantage on attack rolls against you. Warding Mark is supposed to make you more tanky as a Ranger. And I felt like this was a good addition, because if we're going to spend our concentration on Hunter's Mark, we want to get some good features from it. And Hunter's Mark is a single target, or it concentrates on a single target. So if we are wanting to cast Hunter's Mark on a boss, being able to protect ourselves against that boss with Warding Mark would be greatly beneficial, and gives us some more versatility with our Ranger. The second part of the second additional effect that we could add instead of Warding Mark is a Wounding Mark. And what Wounding Mark does is it makes the creature marked by our Hunter's Mark spell take that spell's extra damage at the start of each of its turns. So since we are concentrating on Hunter's Mark, we want to make sure that it is worth the concentration that we are maintaining. And with Wounding Mark, we are ensuring that that creature is taking damage every turn based on, or thanks to us concentrating on this spell. I feel like both of these options are very balanced, and they're not crazy additions here, especially at level 6. This is where we start to see some major class improvements at this later level. At level 5, we just got extra attack, so we are adding this damage in, or we adding our Hunter's Mark damage to up to 2 attacks, potentially 3 or 4 if we're dual wielding, and we have the Nick Mastery property and potentially Defensive Duelist that we took at 4th level. We could be doing a lot here. So Wounding Mark is just going to ensure that Hunter's Mark is doing something every round to that creature. Same thing with Warding Mark. It is protecting the caster. So I feel like with this feature, we're going to see not only freeing up our action economy, since we can now cast Hunter's Mark as a reaction when we take damage, you can now buff your Hunter's Mark in 2 ways. So at level 10, I feel like this is a necessary feature that we need to add to Ranger, and that is simply that our damage die of our Hunter's Mark becomes a D8 rather than D6. So at level 10, Foe Hunter is going to increase the damage of Hunter's Mark from that D6 to a D8. And really, this makes perfect sense to me because at level 20, we're getting Foe Slayer, which does this but makes the damage a D10. So we need a midpoint here. And I feel like since there's not a midpoint, we need to add something in here to make this improved. Now, with Foe Hunter, we are doing just that. It is a small damage increase. Basically only one. It's an average of 1 additional damage per attack. So this is a small damage boost. And now that we are getting into tier 3 here, this is a part where we need to increase our damage potential. Now at level 11, I've added in a feature called Powerful Strikes. I took inspiration from the Paladin here. The Paladin has a similar feature at 11th level, I believe called Divine Strikes, that lets them add a D8 radiant or necrotic damage to their weapon or unarmed strike attacks. And so Powerful Strikes here does something very similar for the Ranger. Your strikes now carry supernatural power. When you hit a target with an attack roll using a weapon or an unarmed strike, the target takes an extra 1d6 force damage. So this is not as powerful as the Paladin's Divine Strikes feature, but it does something very similar here. The reason I made it a d6 is because Hunter's Mark is already adding on additional damage, and it really functions as the core damage mechanic of the Ranger class. Since we're already getting this extra damage from Hunter's Mark on every single attack, I felt like the extra damage from Powerful Strikes needed to be a smaller die to make up for that increased damage potential, which is why here, instead of a D8, as the Paladin has, I've gone with a D6. So I hope that makes sense, at least balancing wise. And then finally, at level 20, we're adding a new feature called Master Hunter. Master Hunter lets us always have the Conjure Volley and Steel Wind Strike spells prepared. In addition, you can cast each of these spells without expending a spell slot. And once you cast either spell in this way, you can't cast that spell in this way again until you finish a long rest. So with Master Hunter here, we are getting 2 5th level spells always prepared, and we get a free casting of each of those spells. Conjure Volley and Steel Wind Strike are two of the best 5th level Ranger spells in their spell list. So getting free castings of these spells just ensure that they're doing something really potent at level 20. This is increasing their damage potential in tier 4, granted at the end of tier 4, and it's also giving something really interesting and cool for them to do. And since Rangers have they're a half caster, so they have a limited amount of spell slots, getting 2 free castings of 2 5th level spells, or getting a free casting of 2 5th level spells each, is just really potent. And I feel like, especially at level 20, this is not a whole lot this is not really crazy to think of. At level 20 for Fighter, they're making 4 attacks, and they can action surge twice. The Barbarian gets their Constitution and Strength increased by 4 up to a maximum of 25, so they're really potent capstones at level 20. And I feel like this is doing some really interesting work here, but it's not overtly crazy. It's 2 free castings of 2 5th level spells and free preparations for the class. So the Ranger is really going to be able to capitalize on these high damage spells and do some interesting things with them. And I feel like that's what we are looking for here. So that is essentially what I have for this video. Granted, these are only 4 new features. One of them I did in the last video, which is Foe Hunter. I feel like Foe Hunter is a necessary addition. Even if you just added that feature, it might be enough to make Ranger just a little bit more potent. And then if you really like the 6th level feature that I added, even if you take away casting Hunter's Mark as a reaction in response to taking damage, just getting the additional warding mark and wounding mark effects that you could add on to your Hunter's Mark casting, I feel like that in itself is extremely potent. And so that is what I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate your guys' support. Glad to be back making these videos for you, and I will catch you all in the next one. See you guys. Have a good one.